Hey, I didn't see you there. I'm just catching up on my reading. I'm reading Deep Nutrition by Catherine Shanahan. I'm on chapter 3. You want to hear about it? I knew you did. This chapter is called Dynamic Symmetry, Nature's Desire for Beauty. Basically, this chapter explains how beauty is just equals form and function, and beauty isn't a matter of vanity. It says here, on page 36, controversial and enigmatic as the subject of beauty may seem, in reality, beauty is simply another natural phenomenon which, like gravity, or the speed of light, can be quantified, analyzed, and understood. Though poets and songwriters might object, significant benefits can be derived from deconstructing human beauty using the same tools we would bring to any other scientific question. For starters, beauty can tell us quite a lot about our genetic histories, our bodies, and our health. For example, if someone had to have braces or glasses, that means that they had suboptimal skull architecture. Like for me, I have to have glasses, and I also had braces. That means my mandible didn't form right in the womb, and my orbital cavities were a little bit too big or too small, which put the focus of my eyes on the wrong place, which is why I had to have corrective lenses. And just like the laws of chemistry or physics, the laws of physical attraction can be best understood using mathematics. The person who discovered this most recently, because it's been known by the Egyptians and the Greeks that they thought that mathematics was the key to understanding beauty and the world around them. But the person who discovered this most recently was Dr. Marquardt. He discovered it in 1970s because he was concerned about this patient that he was going to have to reconstruct her basically entire face, and he wondered how he could know that he was going to do a good job. So he wanted to find a formula, because plastic surgeons, even now, don't really have a formula unless they follow Marquardt's mask. What he did was he basically studied rules of beauty in art and architecture, even music, and tried to find a formula. And basically he found that these individual subjects kept being linked together by mathematics. And at the core of the mathematical principles for beauty was the Fibonacci sequence, which you might have heard of in the Da Vinci Code. The Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers, and the first 6 numbers go like this: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. So basically it's just saying that to get the next number in line, you just add the previous 2 numbers together. So 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 1 is 3, 3 and 2 is 5, and so on and so forth. And eventually, if you carry the sequence out into infinity, the ratio of the last 2 numbers is an irrational number. It converges on to 1.618033, etc., etc., etc. And this is actually called the golden ratio, and is represented by the Greek letter phi, which is spelled P-H-Y. P-H-I. The Greek letter phi, P-H-I. And this golden ratio basically was used by the Greeks and the Egyptians to build perfectly balanced structures of art. And also Socrates and Da Vinci were fascinated by this phi. Socrates saw it in geometry, and Da Vinci, when drawing his Vitruvian Man, was trying to find a formula basically that showed how our bodies were symmetrical or connected within the rest of the world. What Marquardt realized was that this phi, this golden ratio, was able to produce a sort of dynamic symmetry. And dynamic symmetry is this: in the theory of perception, there are 2 ways to create harmonic balance within objects or space. And the first way is to divide them into equal parts, so you'll have symmetry of balance. And the second way is to divide them based on the golden section, which gives you a sort of asymmetry. But this asymmetry is perfect because the ratio of the lesser to the greater is the same as the ratio of the greater to the whole. So it's just saying that, like, if you had a bunch of different triangles, here, I'll show you actually. It's like this. I'm sure you can't really see it that well, but do you see those little boxes in there? It's basically saying that these boxes, you'll get the next bigger one over here. It's just saying that the ratio of the lesser to the bigger part is the same as the bigger part to the whole. And basically what he did was he found out Marquardt's mask by having these series of lines and triangles drawn out, and he called it the primary golden decagon matrix. And this is what it looks like. I don't know if you'll be able to see this one either. It's kind of blurry. But it basically is a bunch of series of triangles that depicts the perfect human face. Marquardt's mask is a matrix of points, lines, and angles delineating the geometric framework and borders of what Marquardt calls the archetypical face, which is a plotted graph of the visual idea of our collective unconscious yearns for. So nested within this matrix are 42 secondary golden decagon matrices, each the same shape as the larger matrix, but smaller by various multiples of phi. These lock onto the primary matrix by at least 2 vertices. The mask defines the ideal three-dimensional arrangement for every facial feature, from the size of the eyes, their distance from one another, the width of the nose, the fullness of the upper and lower lip, and so on. So basically, if you can Google that, because the picture I showed you wasn't very good, but you can definitely see like and it fits across these 2 women on the bottom's faces. I know you can't see it in the book because obviously the webcam isn't that good, but it shows how even though they look completely different to the naked eye, when you put this mask over them, the mask fits perfectly to both of their faces. And the funny thing is, it's not only in the human face that we see this phi repeating, but phi and the Fibonacci sequence are in living matter everywhere, like pine cones, segments of insect bodies, the spiral of the nautilus shell, basically everything that grows. Like every time a plant shoots out a new leaf, it does it in a way that it'll shoot it out so it'll still get sun, but not shade any of the lower leaves. This is something called phyllotaxis. It's spelled P-H-Y-L-L-O-T-A-X-I-S. And this it explains the spiraling growth of stems, petals, roots, and other plant organs, which occurs in over 90% of the plants in the entire world. So this angle is 137.5 degrees, or 1 over phi squared times 360 degrees. So this just shows that all living matter basically has phi at its core. And it doesn't do this through DNA, but it's basically saying that physics and mathematics just take over after the initial growth is started. It says, physics and mathematics are capable of producing intricate patterns in non-organic constructions. For example, snowflakes, sand dunes, stuff like that. They can offer a range of patterns which will emerge spontaneously, giving the correct starting conditions. The theory, which is currently gaining support, says that life operates by using DNA to create the right starting conditions, and thereafter physics and math do all the rest. This also occurs in your brain. Your brain cells have the same growth pattern, basically. All the dendrites that branch out, it has the same growth pattern. And why it does this is because that way it's the most efficient way to pack as much brain nerves connections into your skull as possible. And basically, how our entire way of thinking, cognition, is an emergent property. And emergence it refers to the way that complex systems, like cognition basically, arise out of patterns of relatively simple interactions. So like a simple interaction from one nerve cell to the other then spreads throughout millions millions of your nerve cells. So that's how you get cognition. So like your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are the resonance frequencies that arise when millions of your neurons are stimulated, not just a few. But each one of those little tiny simple interactions is what emergence is because each interaction is simple, but when you combine them all and see the pattern, it becomes very complex. So that's basically why our brains, we like beauty, we like this Marquardt's mask, because the same pattern that is on faces is also in our brains, so it might be more easily recognizable to us. There was actually a study done where they showed rats like clear pattern, like checkered squares, and the rats were immobilized and would stare at it trying to figure out the pattern. But then when they turned the screen to white noise, they would just continue feeding and they didn't care about it. And the same can actually be said for if you ever see like babies. They'll stare at like at a beautiful face, or even adults. You know, you're captured by that face. You want to look at it more. You want to stare at it. But then someone who's just like plain, or their face varies even by a millimeter or two, makes a huge difference. Turns them from supermodel worthy into just plain. You can see that you don't want to stare at it as long because the pattern isn't as pleasing to your brain, basically. Oh, sorry. I said I was also going to talk about the female body type and how it is affected by phi. And the natural growth doesn't happen sometimes because if you have the incorrect starting conditions, you know, like your spine is a little bit too short and things like that. But if everything were to start correctly and through your diet you wouldn't interrupt your hormone signals, you would become an hourglass shape. But there are 4 categories now instead of just the ideal hourglass. There's the banana, the apple, the pear, and the hourglass. And this is what they look like in the book. And as you can see, the banana is basically flat, the pear is heavier on, the apple is heavier on top, the pear is heavier on bottom, and the hourglass is ideal. It has curves, voluptuous curves, basically. And it says that voluptuousness is an indication of healthy female sexual dimorphism, while the lack of voluptuousness indicates a problem. Normally, the hips and bust develop during puberty as a result of healthy surge in sex hormones. These developments involve an expansion of the pelvic bones along with deposition of fat and glandular tissue within the breast. But women whose genetics are such that their spines are abnormally short, or their hormonal surge is less pronounced, or whose diet has interfered with the body's response to hormones, end up with boxier figures. If they're thin, they'll have a banana figure. It'll be flat, like a ruler. If they put on weight, it gets distributed in a more masculine pattern on the belly, the neck, stuff like that, and it'll become an apple. But today, after 3 generations of trans fat and consumption, which interferes with hormone expression, which I'll explain in Chapter 8, and with daily infusions of sugar, which interferes with your hormone's receptivity, hourglass figures are basically non-existent. Less than 10% of the female body, the female population has an hourglass figure now, which, you know, doesn't make any sense. So why aren't we all perfect? Because generally we've been moving away from good foods, not eating the 4 pillars of world cuisine, which help you get good genes and have good starting conditions. And we've been moving towards foods like trans fats and sugars, which interrupt your hormones and how your body responds to them. And we're not all perfect, but we are really close. Marquardt has shown that even though our faces aren't exactly on with the mask, a lot of us are very, very close. And basically the reason for this is that we've evolved past the point of efficiency. Now people, instead of dying off like they would have in the wild or not being chosen, like there's different classes and things like that. Now you can get a good job no matter whether you look beautiful or not, and it doesn't necessarily matter as much your beauty. But if we were to eat right, your children will eventually regain that perfect physics and math expression, and phi will take over and do all the work, and they will become beautiful. In the next chapter, I'll discuss Weston Price. He was a dentist, and it talks all about teeth and how he discovered traditional diets about 100 years before Marquardt even started looking into this. Thanks for watching this really long video. Special shout out to Danny Ivino because he helped me film the beginning. And if you guys have questions or comments, feel free to post. thanks again for watching, and hope you guys are doing well. Bye!